this episode of the Mamas Con Ganas podcast, I'm going to be talking about radically loving your body. Radically loving your body. Wow. It's a big subject, Mamacita. This episode is going to be very personal. I want to share my story. I think it's worth sharing because I think a lot of people are going around not loving their bodies. Definitely not radically loving their bodies. They go about their lives rejecting their bodies and rejecting their temple, the physical temple that they're in while they're living in this lifetime. And some might hear the topic of this podcast and think to themselves that it's a very, shallow conversation. But I believe that radically loving your body and choosing to radically love your body is one of the most spiritual things that you can do. So I'm going to be sharing my story or my journey towards radically loving my body. And I share my story because I think that many of you might see parts of themselves in my story. And as I tell my story, you might want to, think about how, where things might relate, where you might have things in common or not. And just ask yourselves, what is a relationship that I have, or what is a relationship you have with your own body, with the temple of your body? Is it a good one? Do you say loving things to yourself in the mirror when you look at yourself in the mirror, or do you reject a lot of parts of yourself? I don't know about you, but I grew up listening to the women around me talking very, I would say, negatively about their bodies. And I don't think it was done intentionally. It was done unconsciously. I think sometimes we talk, or we're taught to say those things to fit in because that's what everybody else says about themselves. So you kind of fall into the trap of saying those things about yourself as well, right? If in my case, I have a very beautiful mom, physically beautiful mom, but I don't think that she quite knew just how beautiful she was. And even though she knew she was beautiful physically, sometimes what would come out of her mouth were things that were not so nice about herself. Like, when people look at themselves, or when you look at yourself and you see everything that's wrong and you point out everything that might be wrong and you don't really pay attention to all the things that are right. I think we all have something about ourselves that we love, right? No matter how much we reject our bodies, we all have that one thing that we're like, oh, this part about me I like. In my case, I've always loved my eyelashes because people have always complimented my eyelashes. So I had a good relationship with my eyelashes. Not such a good relationship with my tummy or my belly because I would hear comments like, oh, your tummy sticks out. Or, like suck in your belly. I would hear comments like that. But sometimes when I would hear my mom, in comments, not even directly to me, but about herself, I would hear her say things that I hear very commonly in other women as well. So I don't want to be here. I'm not picking at my mom. My mom has taught me so many things and I am so grateful for her. So it's not about that. I think it's just about how she was conditioned to only see those things that might not be perfect or perfect, in quotation, like perfect, right? Quote unquote perfect, in society's view, or what was ideal, right? I also have a grandmother who would say, always just talk about how old she always looked. And it's so interesting because she would always put herself down physically, but I always saw her as so beautiful because I loved her so much, or I love her so much. And I remember just having this internal, like, that feeling that you don't like when you hear somebody like say something and it feels to you like they're scratching, like they're using their nails to scratch a board and it's like a horrible sound. That's the only way I could describe what it felt like when I would hear my grandmother talk about how old she looked and how ugly she was and how beautiful I was. It would always sound to me like nails on a board. And I have to recognize now that that's the way that it always just feels. I just got so numb to listening to other women talk bad about themselves that I got numb to that feeling of the nail scratching on the board. Because I think that to this day, when I hear a woman, talk about herself in a negative way, I just, I don't like it. I don't like it because I want to yell at the top of my lungs, "You're so beautiful. I don't care what you look like." Like they could say anything and I see their beauty. I do. There's always something beautiful to admire, and I think there's always a reason to radically love and accept yourself as you are. And I know that some people might be listening to me and might say, well, I can't love myself because, I weigh this much, or I can't love myself because I have this defect in my body, or I can't love myself because my hair's thinning out, or because I'm 65 or 45 or whatever, and I'm old, and I can't love myself because my body's not the way that it used to be before I had kids. I get it. So a lot of people are going to be starting to make excuses in their heads. And they're going to be comparing themselves automatically to somebody else who they think is more beautiful than they are. I've seen it happen so many times. And it's so funny because if you then go to the person that they're comparing themselves with, whoever that person is comparing themselves with, and say, well, they can love their body because they're so much more beautiful, whatever. And if you go to that person who's thought of as so beautiful, you'll find a woman just as insecure as the other one who made excuses for all of her flaws, flaws in quotation marks. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I'm an actor. So I'm in the entertainment industry, mamacita, and as you can imagine, being in the entertainment industry, there's a lot of self-image issues, to say it and to put it lightly. And I think there was a day that profoundly changed the way that I saw things. I'm going to share the story of what happened. So, because I'm in the acting industry, I have been in rooms, like in the audition room, with some of the most, I would say, beautiful people, again, in quotation marks, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Beautiful people in the standards of like what is considered beautiful, right? I mean, you walk into these places, these women are like tall and slim, and they just have what television or what the media has portrayed as like the perfect woman. So I'm surrounded by a lot of, I would say I could fall into the trap of falling into a lot of comparison, right? And one time I was in an acting class. I was in an acting class. It was a theater acting class. We had a very interesting exercise that they did. So we all sat in a circle and we all had to name that part of our body that we really rejected. That part of our body that just made us cringe, that we wish didn't exist, that we wished we could change, that we wish we had been born without, or that we wish we had been born with something differently. Like we had to like pinpoint what it was about ourselves that we rejected. Like the one, like we could there I know some people are there going like, well, I'd reject my entire body. Okay. But I know there's people out there like that. But here we had to pinpoint like what we most despised and rejected about our bodies. And so I'm going to put you in my headspace because I'm sitting here in a room full of like supermodels and like big influencers and beauty influencers. Like women that are like tall, again, taller than me. So obviously you're going to hear the complexes that I used to have. Oh, these women are taller than me, slimmer than me. They have just like the right curves and their hair and their like everything. Okay. They're younger, like everything. In my head, I'm like, oh my God, what is this exercise? I'm like, are you serious? Like, I have to sit here in a room full of like perfect looking people and they're gonna like, what are they gonna choose? I thought to myself, this is ridiculous. What the heck are they gonna see about themselves if they're all perfect? This is my thoughts in, in my head, okay? I'm letting you know what was in my head. As I was like, because of course I'm sitting there and I'm like, I couldn't mind and couldn't help comparing myself to all the women in the room. I'm like sizing them up and I'm like, okay, for sure, I'm the one who's gonna struggle the most doing this. I'm like, "Ugh." And it was incredible, Mamacita. It was, I will never forget this exercise as long as I lived. Because I was not the first to go or the last to go. I was like in the middle. And as we started doing the exercise, I literally wanted to cry because I was seeing these women that I considered just perfect, physically perfect, right? Physically perfect. And they were talking about the parts of themselves that they rejected. And I'm telling you, the things that they said were like the thing, like I remember this one time this girl said something and I was like, what? But no, no, no. She had talked about how her brother had made fun of some part of her body. I forget what part it was. And after that, she always hated that part of her body because she couldn't forget about how her brother had teased her. And that part of her body, I don't think anybody else would have noticed it as something wrong or something ugly. And I'm looking at her going like, you got to be kidding me. And she would start crying. And we went around the room and literally, I think all of us were in tears when we were speaking about that aspect of ourselves that we rejected. Like, I know I cried when I talked about mine, and I remember I said I rejected my stomach, and everybody immediately went, like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, I was, like I said, I was always told to suck in. I was always told, oh, you look like you're pregnant. Or I was like, it was like, like when I didn't suck in, like when I would gain a little weight, it's where the weight would go. Like I was like, I had a complex about it, right? I remember talking about that. I remember breaking out into tears. I remember people coming to me afterwards going like, what are you talking about? And I just noticed that in that moment, just how the venom of self-loathing and self-rejection and self-hatred, how it was so ingrained in our world. I'm like, it's not possible. All these women that I think are perfectly perfect are not. So it changed my perspective. Just, if you're thinking still like, well, you're in a room of this, of course it doesn't make any sense. No, I'm telling you, it doesn't make any sense for anybody to hate their own body. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So this year, I met a woman who showed me what self-love looks like. Radical self-love towards oneself. And I have to say, I think I had been waiting my whole life to see a woman love herself so profoundly and deeply because I needed her to give myself permission to love myself. And this is why I'm doing this episode. And I'm doing this episode specifically on like radically loving like your body, right? Because self-love has a lot of aspects. So I'm well aware of um the fact that self-love doesn't just have to do with your body. But I do think that it's a very important part of self-love. How can we love other aspects of ourselves? Like really radically love other aspects of ourselves and accept ourselves fully and completely without fully loving our own temple, our own body. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. So that's why I'm giving this topic such importance. So, anyways, going back to meeting somebody who showed me that, I was in awe because I had seen people pretending to love themselves. People pretending to love themselves. Or I had seen people love themselves, but in my eyes, thinking, they couldn't possibly love themselves. I mean, look at what they look like. And now understanding that those people actually really did love themselves. I was just projecting my own insecurities into that person. You know what I mean? Like when we have such a hard time loving our own body that we think that it can't possibly be that somebody who has a certain type of look can't possibly love themselves. Because if I can't love myself at this, like this, how could that other person that I deem as less than love themselves like that? No, it's impossible. And now, after the work that I've done this year, I recognize that it is possible to love yourself radically, to love your body radically, no matter who you are. No matter who you are. And we see examples of this everywhere. But when we are caught up in the matrix of not loving ourselves, we think it's impossible. We think it's impossible for people who are born without arms to love their bodies. We think it's impossible that, that people who are a certain weight can love themselves. We think it's impossible for people with XYZ to love themselves because we deem that thing as like, no. We wouldn't love ourselves if we had that. But there are people walking around loving themselves. And maybe you know this already. And maybe you don't need to hear this episode. But let me tell you, I really needed this. I really needed to wake up because I was fast asleep. Fast asleep. So I went on a retreat this year because I think this year for me has been a discovery of self-love, a remembering of self-love. And I think that it's a remembering, or I say that it's a remembrance because I think there's a moment in time when we're born and we're little when we all love ourselves. You know, like babies when they finally recognize themselves in the mirror and they're laughing at their own reflection. And they're not yet given that perception that you have to be a certain way or act a certain way or look a certain way in order for them to love themselves. They just love themselves the way they are. We all start there. And then somewhere along the way, we feel insecure. We're made fun of. We're told something that hurts us profoundly. We develop wounds and scars and so many people, and then we hear so many people talk badly about themselves that we think to ourselves, we come to the conclusion, I guess if I'm going to live in this world and I'm going to be accepted, I guess I'm going to have to start talking bad about myself too. So we start repeating the pattern. We start emulating everybody else that talks badly about themselves. We start rejecting ourselves because we feel like we want to fit in, because don't we all just want to fit in? Don't we all just want to be loved? And we forget that feeling loved first has to come from within. It's like all so clear, but it's all so foggy when we're living in that state of mind. So I've had different episodes on this topic of self-image, but definitely I think this one is very special. Because, so I'll tell you, when I was younger, I did a lot of ballet. And there was a moment in time where I had a very difficult time accepting my body and who I was because of who I surrounded myself with and the activities that I was doing. And I love ballet, and I don't, I don't want to poo-poo it, and I would do it all over again if I could. But the ballet world is another world where people are very, very hard, and they're judged very hard, roughly and hard. They're judged very severely, just merely on their physical body, right? Like you have to be born with a certain arch of your foot, and you have to be in a particular type of body, light legs, very thin musculature. And I just wasn't that. I have a very, I guess, stereotypical, because it's not what obviously all Latinas are, but I have a stereotypical Latin butt, with like the butt. I have like I tend to have a more athletic body, but I definitely didn't have the ballet body. And for the longest time, I remember just wishing that my DNA was different, that I had been given a different body. Like I wanted to be a ballerina so bad. Like, God, why didn't you just give me this ballerina body? I wanted to be thin. I just want to be thin, 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 thin. I didn't want butt. I didn't want boobs. I didn't want anything. I just wanted to be like a stick. And I knew a lot of the girls that were in ballet class with me who were sticks, right? They had that stick figure body. And I was so envious of that. And interestingly enough, I have a really good friend of mine who has that exact body type. And she confessed to me once how much she wished she had been born in a different body, and how much she wished she had been given curves and that she wasn't as thin as she was. It just makes you realize, like, oh my God, this is so crazy what we do to ourselves. It's so insane. It's so insane. So, anyways, I went through a period during my adolescence where I just rejected the whole thing. Rejected the whole thing. And rejecting the whole thing would sometimes, not sometimes, it led me to have a very bad relationship with food. At one point, I almost developed bulimia, but I hated throwing up. That's the only reason I didn't become bulimic was because I couldn't stand throwing up. Otherwise, I think I would have done that because I loved to eat and I loved food. So I wanted to eat and throw up, but I wanted to be thin. Like I wanted to look like I wanted to give my body like 100 calories a day and have my body like just put myself at its thinnest. I mean, it's interesting because I never really spoke about it. This truth about mine, very few people know about this. I've kind of given different bits and pieces of information here and there, but if I was really gonna admit and be truthful to myself, like I just wish I didn't need food at that moment when I was like a teenager. It's almost like I wished that I didn't need food, so I could just dance and be super skinny as I could for my body type, right? Even though I think that wouldn't have even been enough for me. That's what it was. As I grew up, I am grateful to say that I had more or less good role models. Because even though I mentioned my mom in the beginning, my mom also had another facet of her that loved her and that also taught me confidence in myself. So I saw that. I saw that my mom loved part of herself, but then rejected another part of herself, right? So I saw that there was this duality, and I kind of fell into that trap, the trap of like, I love myself. I know I have to love myself. My mom tells me that I have to love myself. I'm getting good feedback from other people, but at the same time, I don't like myself. And so it was like this battle, right? And I think for most of my adult life, it was kind of like I was in this silent battle. I don't think I had the worst relationship with food, but I don't think it was the best relationship with food either, right? And I would always say, you know what? I exercise because I like to eat. That was what I would always tell me. I exercise because I want to eat because I enjoy food. And having lived in France, and France, it's very interesting. They have a very interesting way, I would say, of looking at food. Because for the French, food is very pleasurable. It is all about pleasure. Because the French, man, they know how to cook those sauces with the meats and they know how to make those pastries and the cheeses and the wines. And you get lost in flavor when you're in France. And I think France was very important for me in order to understand that food was definitely linked with self love and pleasure and pleasure. That there was something very pleasurable about food. So I started to understand, okay, but again, it's like this dichotomy of I understand, I get to enjoy it, and when I travel and I go there, I want to enjoy it like maximum. But then afterwards, it's like I would go back and forth between allowing myself to partake in the pleasure and then I have to go on a diet because I have to lose this amount of weight and having that rejection with food and with my body. Because I think the rejection with food goes along with the rejection of the body. And I kept growing. So knowing that I had this duality, but knowing that I wanted to find something else beyond that, right? And I would always like ask people, it was like, I swear to God, I was looking for the person to show me true love, looking for the person to show me true love, but not love towards me. I wanted to see it first in somebody else. So going back, I'm kind of going on tangents, but I think all of this is really, I think, juicy and useful information for all of you because I think that, I don't know, I was listening to a book the other day about being seen. It's called Be Seen, the book, and it talks about like um, a woman, Jen Gottlieb, I think is her name, and she was talking about this subject and she was sharing her story. And when I was listening to part of her story, I'm like, oh my God, that's like my story. I mean, it's different, but there's so many elements of that story that are like me. Like, oh my God, like I can't believe how healing it was for me to hear another woman talk truthfully about themselves and about their relationship with their body. So, fast forward to a Valentina that I would say has grown to love herself more and more, and who now thinks in the beginning of 2024 that now thinks by this time, I think I got this self love figured out. I think I got it figured out. I think I love myself. I don't think I was thinking that I did it fakely, but I was thinking, okay, I think I've gotten as far as I can with regards to self love. There's certain things that I accept of myself. There's, you know, when I look at myself in the mirror, for the most part, it's good, but I can't possibly ever have a perfect relationship with myself because that's not possible, right? Fast forward to that version of Valentina, who I would say was like 75% there through a lot of self improvement courses, through a lot of spirituality things, through a lot of life coaches. I mean, a lot of things got me to that 75% where I was like, okay, I know that having a healthy relationship with food is important. I'm doing that little by little, not that it's perfect. At that point, I was thinking that. So this year, I do a retreat and I observe. someone who I see, I see, my eyes are open, loves themselves, truly. And I'm like, wow. And in the beginning, obviously, my perception is, well, of course, that person loves themselves fully. I mean, look at her. She's perfect. I have to look like her in order to be able to love myself. That was my thought. And I didn't even go to the retreat, Mamacita, looking for self love and radical self love of my body. Because I thought to myself, I got this shit figured out for the most part. I love myself for the most part. I'm trying to solve all their issues in my life. But being around in the presence of somebody who truly loves yourself would blow your mind. I was like, wow, I want to drink that Kool-Aid. And in the second retreat, I had this moment where I'm like looking at myself in the mirror. And I don't know why I'm like all of a sudden thinking about like my relationship to my body. I'm doing this mirror work, what I would call mirror work. And my first experience with mirror work and self body image is when I turned 40 and I'm about to go on the boat with my parents. We're going to celebrate my 40th birthday. And I happen to be like 8 pounds heavier than I usually was. And I have to put on my bikini and I look at myself and I roll my eyes. I'm like, ugh, I didn't have this cellulite like a couple years ago. And now I'm turning 40 and ugh. And then I saw obviously, my belly that I told you about that I have had a hard time dealing with. I'm like, oh my God. And like literally rolling my eyes. Like, I don't want to wear a bikini. I don't want to go to the beach. I don't want to do this. I don't want. And there was a voice that came out of nowhere from my head that I heard say, oh, no, 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 no. You are not going to do this today. And I was like, what? Like I heard that voice in my head. And the next thing she said made me laugh so hard. She said, you are going to take that cellulite, girl, and that belly and everything else that comes along with it, and you're going to strut yourself on the beach, and you are going to own that bikini like you never owned a bikini in your life. And I remember looking at myself, my jaw dropping, and thinking to myself, WTF. And I started cracking up. And I was like, I don't know who that voice that just appeared, but okay. I guess I'm going to go strut myself on the beach and take my bikini with me. And I went, and it was the first moment where I'm like, you have to stop talking bad about yourself in the mirror. It's like, you're not going to go there. That was the first time that I had confronted myself with that. And it came out of nowhere. And so I'm in the retreat, and now I see myself, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm not liking what I see. So I'm struggling because I'm like, God, man, I've done so much self-work and so much work and looking at myself. And like now I'm like, why am I so unhappy? Why am I so unhappy? Oh, I don't like it. I don't like it. Whatever. I saw myself. I rejected the person that I saw in the mirror and I left. And later on in the retreat, I come back. It was in the bathroom. It was when I would go to the bathrooms that this was happening, right? In between all the other things that we were doing. And I go back to the bathroom and I look at myself in the mirror this time and I'm like, it's almost like I had a different perspective of myself. And now this time, for some reason, I looked better in the mirror. I'm like, oh, this is the kind of stuff I wanted to see the first time. Like last time I came into the bathroom, this is what I wanted to see. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Where's the other Valentina? Where's the Valentina that I don't like? And it was a split second where I realized that there were two Valentinas, the Valentina that I didn't like to see and the Valentina that I wanted to see. And then at that moment, I decided, no. Show me the other Valentina, the one I don't like. And the voice in my head, I must be the same voice that came to me when I turned 40, so 5 years ago, said, well, Valentina, see, the thing is, It doesn't matter what you see in the mirror. You never like yourself anyways. You're always finding something wrong about yourself anyways. Boom. Mic drop. Like freaking mic drop. And I'm like, what? No, 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 no. What do you mean? Oh, no, 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 no. I remember thinking to myself, oh, no, no, no. This has to stop. This has got to stop. You mean that I'm so mean to myself that no matter what shows up in the mirror, I'm still not going to like myself? I was like, this is not, no, 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 no. And I just remember getting so angry because I'm like, if there's a way that I can hate myself regardless of what I see in the mirror, then it popped into my head, then there must be a way where no matter what I see in the mirror, I love myself. Let me repeat that. I realized that if there was a way to hate myself and reject my body, no matter what I saw in the mirror, that then there must be a way that if I looked at myself in the mirror, that there must be a way to love myself unconditionally, regardless of what I saw in the mirror. And I'm like, well, if I get anything to do with that choice, like if there's a choice to radically hate myself or to radically love myself, then dude, I'm choosing option B. I'm choosing option B. I don't want to stay in the hating myself no matter what I see. Because then no matter what I do to myself and my body, it'll never be enough. What if I loved myself in the mirror no matter what I saw? Like, what if? Oh my gosh. And then that thought, it started to permeate and flood my consciousness. And I became very aware and observant of how I would talk to myself when I saw myself in the mirror. And I became very aware that usually when I looked in the mirror, the first thing that I would do would be to point out something that I didn't like. It was like my go-to. Automatically, my eyebrows could be done that day, but look, there's a little, imperfection here on the right side of your face. And if that imperfection was gone, then it was like, oh my God, the rash in my eye came back or whatever. I started being very, very mindful and very aware in the moment by moment, every time I would look in the mirror. I'm like, what is she going to say to herself this time? I would come to the mirror with curiosity. I literally would come to the mirror and be like, okay, what's Valentina going to say about herself this time? And I started stopping myself. Like as soon as, when the habit would come back up and I would start looking at that one thing that I would always point out, the negative thing, I'd be like, no, 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 no. Stop, 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 stop. Not replace it with anything necessarily. Just like, no, 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 you're not going to go there. Like that's not what we're going to concentrate on. And that in itself was already magical. And this is months of a development, right? So this year, as the months went by, I'm starting to realize, wow, I'm very unkind to myself in the mirror. Why am I so mean? Why am I so mean? Why am I so mean to myself? That was hard to swallow. Whew. Oh yeah. So hard to swallow. Why am I so mean? I would ask myself, why am I so mean to myself? Why am I so mean to myself? Can I say something nice to myself? What if I start saying nice things to myself? Can I try it out? Feels kind of silly. Oh my gosh. Does that make me full of myself? If I start saying something nice to myself? Is that cocky? Is that being egocentric? Is that my ego? Or could I say something to myself that's true? Is it possible to love myself and say something nice to myself and mean it? Hmm. Is that a possibility? So I started exploring different things. And I don't know. I can't, if I were to say, oh, I can pinpoint to the moment where all of a sudden I just saw like a total shift. I can't pinpoint it. But on the third retreat that I did this year, I'm taking a shower. Everything happens in the bathroom for me, Mama say that, I guess. So I'm in the shower and I've been having this amazing experience with these women and it's like the sisterhood and the conversations we're having are so beautiful and deep. So beautiful and deep. And I'm in the shower and I start putting shampoo on, like washing my hair. But like I very I used to be very like matter of fact when I did all of my skincare or hygiene routines, right? It's like I gotta brush my teeth. I gotta put my shampoo on, like just to get it done. Like I gotta do this just to get it done so I can move on to the next thing. That's how I would you. How I would go through the motion of hygiene or self care. It was just like, I gotta do this to be done with it and go. But here I am putting shampoo on my hair, and all of a sudden this thought goes through my head. And I think, you know, Valentina, you never th- thought to thank your hair. And I was like, what? So I'm just brushing my shampoo. I'm doing my shampoo like every other day. But I think because of the fact that I was more in the moment and more mindful, I have that thought flutter through my head. And I'm like, what? I've never thought to thank my hair. I'm like, well, that's a silly thought. Thank my hair. And the next thought is like, yeah, you've never done that. You touch your hair, you wash your hair, and you've never thanked yourself for it. I don't know what comes over me. All of a sudden, I'm washing my hair with like all this love and like feeling my hair. And I go into this mode of like, oh my God, I've never thanked you, hair. I've never thanked you. Like, thank you. Thank you for growing. Thank you for allowing me to brush you. Thank you. I'm so appreciative of you. Have I ever told you how much I'm appreciative of you? And I'm in my headspace, like just showing gratitude for my hair. I'm in this whole, like, it felt like a ritual. And then it like catapulted to all these other thoughts. Well, Valentina, you've never thought to thank your hands. Now I'm looking at my hands in the shower. Like, oh my God. No, I've never thought to thank my hands. And I'm like, thanking my hand. I go into this whole gratitude thing where I go body part by body part, cleaning myself and touching myself and being grateful for every inch of my body. And I finish the shower and I literally think to myself, oh my God, this is one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. Oh my gosh, why haven't I ever thought of this? Like, deep gratitude for every single part of myself, but like intentionally and meaning it. It wasn't fake. I'm like, and all of a sudden I'm walking around. This is in September, by the way. So September, October, November. It's been like 3 months, 4 months. October, September, yeah, October, November, September, yeah, December, yeah. 3 months ago is when this hit me, and I'm like, oh my God. So I come home from the retreat different already. I'm like, the way I'm gonna brush my teeth is gonna be different. The way that I brush my hair is going to be different. The way that I put cream on after I take a shower is going to be different. Everything is going to be injected with love. And the more I do it, the better I start feeling about myself. And now I'm realizing that now when I'm looking in the mirror, dude, the conversation has changed. And recently, in this past week, because this is the reason I'm doing this episode, is because there was a moment where I'm still noticing things that I don't particularly like, but they're in a neutral way. Like I'll just notice, oh, look at the wrinkles or look at this. But the next thought after that is, and I love and accept me exactly the way I am. And I'm going to love that wrinkle. And I'm going to breathe love into the wrinkle. And I'm going to breathe love into whatever part of me that for some reason at that moment I happen to be signaling out as less than. I'm going to just breathe love and gratitude to that thing about me. And there was a moment where I was like, wow. I'm looking at myself in the mirror going, it happened. And it had to happen several times this week before I was like, I need to write and do an episode about this. Because now I'm looking in the mirror and going like, Valentina, you're so beautiful. I love you so much. Oh my God. And it's not from a place of insecurity or from a place of lack or from a place of desperation. It's from a place of peace and it's from a place of joy. It's like I was waiting for myself to love myself. I've been waiting my whole life to feel like this. And I know that if it's possible for me at 45 years old, because I'm like, this is funny. I find it very humorous. I'm like, it's funny because when the 45-year-old Valentina looks at my 26-year-old pictures, I'm like, damn, I was hot. Damn, I was beautiful. But at 26 years old, I didn't feel like that. But now at 45, I look at those pictures. I'm like, how could she possibly think there was anything wrong with her? So I find it comical that at 45, I'm discovering this. And I'm like, this makes me feel less scared to grow old. Or actually, it makes me at peace with growing old. Now, does this mean I'm never going to get facials or never get Botox or never get, I don't know, something cosmetic done? No, it doesn't mean that at all. What it means simply is that I'm always going to accept and love myself no matter what. Specifically, right now, I'm talking about my body. That's where I'm at right now. And I'm discovering all the other facets of love, self love about myself. Because it's funny, Mamacita, as soon as like you feel like, wow, this is interesting. I like this. I like the place I am. There's all a bunch of other things that comes like floating to the surface that I'm working through right now. But all I can say is that this has been the most beautiful, beautiful year. A year of self-discovery, a year where I'm just like, man, I want to share this with the whole world. I want to share this with the world. I want to share it with you because in case you know somebody that doesn't feel so good about themselves when they look in the mirror, or if it's you who sees that, I hope that it helps a little bit. I would love to enter more deeply into this conversation of radically loving your body. If you have any comments or questions, DM me on Instagram. Let me know. Share with me your story of self love or self hatred of your body. Where are you at in the journey? Can you say to yourself, I love you no matter what I see in the mirror, I'm always going to love you. And What would it take for you to love that reflection no matter what? How good would it feel if every single time you looked in the mirror, you smiled at yourself and you say, I love you. You're beautiful. Like, really beautiful. And you know what? I feel like the way that I see myself now is like, for those of you who have kids, imagine like your son or your daughter looking in the mirror. And imagine you were the voice of that mirror saying something back to them. And imagine that voice saying what you truly feel about your daughter and your son, which is, you are so beautiful. You are perfect and gorgeous just the way you are. Like, wouldn't you love your son and daughter to think about themselves in that way, to see themselves in the mirror and to feel that love for themselves? And I think this is why it's so imperative to do the work for ourselves. Because if our daughters and our sons get to hear that language of self love, of ourselves towards ourselves, like authentic love, not shallow, not BS, but real self love towards ourselves, wouldn't that be like the best thing you could pass on to your children? Or like one of the things, let's not say it's everything, but wouldn't that just be like one less thing for them to worry about in life? Like for me, it that makes me so excited now that I'm like, oh my gosh. And now I have to do these exercises with my children. Because I feel like to do these exercises when I don't feel it as profoundly, okay, I guess I could fake it a little bit. But now I'm like, oh my God, now that I got this shit down and I feel it. And I'm not saying maybe I won't wake up tomorrow and maybe I'll have some doubt or whatever, but right now I'm feeling it. If I could use this energy to like help my son also get anywhere near this, which I wasn't anywhere near this at any moment of my life until now. Oh my gosh. How amazing, how exciting, how whew, mind blowing. I don't know about you, but that makes me so excited. And I'm excited about this because I see that stepping into my radical love of my body is a permission. It's a permission for everybody else to step into the same. And that's magical. It's amazing. Anyways, if you have any comments or questions, I'm gonna because I could ramble on and on. You can write me or send me comments at mamasconganaspodcast.com/226, mamasconganaspodcast.com/226. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode. It has been such a personal and deeply profound, vulnerable story for me. This is vulnerability for me. Because I think that it's easier and it's more comfortable in our society to say that we have a hard relationship with our body than it is to say that we have a beautiful relationship with our body. So I I I don't know if I would have been courageous enough to do something like this before. I don't think it would have been authentic. I think having the courage as a woman to say to yourself that you love yourself is it's freaking courageous. I mean, that's why we all love what's her name? Taylor Swift. I feel that she's a woman who is unapologetically loving towards herself. She's like a queen, right? I think that's why she has had so much success. And it's interesting because I don't know that many Taylor Swift songs. I know some of them, but like, I don't know, like, I know some of them, but very few songs. But when I see her, I'm like, wow, I can tell that woman loves herself and that she's giving other women permission to love themselves. And I'm talking about loving all the aspects of ourselves, the light and the dark, our strengths and our weaknesses, right? Because we're not perfect. Even once we love ourselves, I think it would be not true that we don't have any weaknesses or that we can't step into, let's say, a wrong state of mind. I mean, we're not perfect human beings. But if we can learn to love ourselves and accept our weaknesses and our strength, our darkness and our light, our good and our bad, then that's, I think that's the most powerful thing we can do as human beings. I think that's what we were born here to do. I think one of our homework assignments in this lifetime is to radically love our body, our temple. We come here for that. Anyways, I love you, Mamacita, so much from the bottom of my heart. See you next week. I have some amazing guests coming up for you on the podcast. I have some pretty remarkable people. Now I'm back, stronger than ever and ready with the engine running and so excited to share the new season because you're going to see a difference between the seasons before this and now. There's some great things in the works and a lot of good things coming, and I'm so excited to share them with you. I love you. Besitos. Hey, it's Valentina Izarra. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Thank you so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing to our motivational channel. If you have any questions or comments, visit our website at mamasconganaspodcast.com or follow me on social media at Mamas Con Ganas. And remember, don't be a mama con drama. Let's be mamas con ganas.